Hi guys, the notes for today are on graphing decimals and fractions, positives and negatives, so graphing rational numbers. I labeled the graph for you, so just in case you forgot the quadrant numbers, and then I also labeled what types of numbers you're going to see in each quadrant. So remember in quadrant 1, that's the first quadrant that you ever worked with. Those have positive and then positive numbers. Quadrant 2 is when you go to the left, which are negative, but then you go up, which are positive. Quadrant 3, or when you go left, which is negative, down, which is negative also, so that's the negative, negative. And then quadrant 4, you're going to the right, which is still positive, but then you're going down, which would be a negative y value. So if you're looking at a graph and you're not sure what the units are, you look at where the origin is and you count, well, how far is the origin from the first unit? Well, it's 2 spaces away, so that means that would be our denominator, 2, or 1/2. And then if we think of it as a decimal, each decimal or each line would be 0.5 or 5/10. So this would be like 50 cents, $1, 1.5 or $1.50 to 2.5 or 2.50. So if we go ahead and start identifying some of these points, this first one is at 1.5, which would be, there's 1.5 right there, and then negative 0.5. So I have a positive negative, which means my point is going to be in quadrant 4. It's a positive first and then a negative. So positive 1.5, and then you go down only 0.5, so it would be R. So in the blue, you're going to put the name of the point in the blue, and then you would tell me the quadrant. The quadrant is in the green, so our quadrant is in quadrant 4. Okay, so if we look at the next set ordered pair, we have a positive and then a negative, positive and negative. So you look at your, if you're not familiar with the quadrants, oh, okay, it's in quadrant 4 again. So you would go over to 1.5 or 1.5, and then now you have to go down past the negative 1, but then to the next unit to the half. So that would be point A, and then it's in quadrant 4 again. And then quadrant 4. And then you can use the Roman numerals too. All right, the third one is at negative, and then the second number is positive. So negative and then positive would be in quadrant 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put that right now. Quadrant 2, or you can put the II for 2. And then since we know it's starting at 0, 0, you go to the left 1 whole unit, and then you go up just a half, or going up just 50 cents, so that would be point G. Okay, the number 19 is at a negative and then a positive, so going to the left and up, so that would be quadrant 2 again, so that would be in the green section, or make sure you put the quadrant in the green, and then the point, you go over negative 1, but then all the way up to 2, which would be point K. So over here we have positive, positive, so that would be in this quadrant over here, which is quadrant 1. And then starting at 0, 0, you go to the right 1.5 or 1.5. 1.5 is between 1 and 2. And then you're going to go up 1 whole unit, so that would be point H. And then the last one that you're going to do with decimals is a negative, negative. So negative, negative is quadrant 3. And then the location is at negative 1/2 or negative 0.5, so that would be right here. And then you have to go down 1.5 units or 1.5 units. So that would be 0.5, negative 1, and this would be negative 1.5. So that would be point N. And now if we go to the fractions, it looks exactly like this, but now you have fractions. So if you look at all of the fractions, you have halves. There's no other fraction here at all, so that means every single line is a half. So if we start graphing these, I'm going to do one for you, and then I want you to put it on pause, and then I want you to finish it on your own, and then check in a second. So graphing this first point is a negative and then a positive number. So that means going to the left is negative values, and then going up is positive values. So you go to the left, -2, and then -2.5 would be right there between -2 and -3. And then you have to go all the way up to +3. So I'm going to grab my heart and drag it all the way over there. And then you just leave it right there. So now you've graphed R. So the heart is at R. Now I want you to pause it, and then I want you to try and graph the rest. And then when you unpause it, you'll check to see if you graphed them correctly. All right, so once you graphed them, a few of them are off the graph. So if you want to check to see if you put them in the correct spot, the first one was at -1, +1/2. So it would be right there going to the left 1 and then up 1/2. The second one is at +, so it would be over here. So +4.5 would be further to the right, and then 1.5 would be between 1 and 2. So the moon is off the graph here. Letter P, which is a positive and then a negative, that would be down here, +3, and then -2.5 would be right there. And then we have a negative, which is over here in this quadrant. Even though it's off the graph, it would be at -3, and then go down to -4.5, which is a little bit further than the boundary on the graph. So you're estimating where it goes. And then the last one was the happy face, which was at, where was it at? It was at 1.5. Okay, the last one was the happy face, which was at +1.5, which is between 1 and 2, and then you go down to -3.5. Now, the other thing that I wanted to go over is if you have a graph in front of you and you're not sure what the units are, so like this one right here, there's nothing other than the first unit. So if you have something that looks like this, then you need to make sure that you're counting to see how many spaces are between the origin and one of the first units. So if I count, I've got 1, 2, 3. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 squares, which mean each line is representing a fourth. So this first one would be 1/4. This one would be 2/4, and this one would be 3/4. Even though it's really messy. And then this line is my 1 hole. And then you keep going. So now if we graph this first point, if you start at your origin, which is where you're supposed to start, you have -1. This would be -1 1/4. This would be -1 2/4. And this would be -1 3/4. So the first part, your x value would be -1 3/4. And then it goes up 1 2/4 up. So 2/4. And if you wanted to simplify it, you could, and you could put a half there instead. So it's a negative and then a positive. And then over here, this point would be at +2/4 as your x value. And then how many down? You're going 1 unit down, 1/4. Okay, so just keep in mind anytime you're not given those units, count. So if there was 3 spaces between the origin and the first unit, this would be 1/3, 2/3, and then the 1 hole. Okay, just keep that in mind. Hopefully you guys understood this concept. Now you're going to go into your journal, I'm sorry, not in your journal, go into your Wednesday assignment and complete that, and hopefully you find it easy.